How you doing?
I'm good. Today's Friday.
I'm me too. I'm so glad. I can't wait. I have to go do a little bit of grocery shopping, but I'm glad it's
I have
Friday.
to go to UIL tomorrow, so it's not really a Friday for me, but that's okay.
But that's good. You know, we're almost there.
Yes.
Starting off, I would like to ask you, how do you anticipate possible students' misunderstandings about assignments, especially when they're working in groups?
Sometimes in a group, especially if it's a very large group, they don't listen sometimes, and they rely on the other students to do everything. They don't focus. So the first thing is I try to keep my groups as small as I can. I like to have no more than 3. Of course, with my class that you came to, it's a very large class, and I had to have some groups with 4 students in it. And in the beginning, I tried to explain to them on the board and demonstrate what they should be doing. That doesn't mean that they all understood, and so during the class I walked around to make sure that they were focused on what they should be working on, and if they had any questions, to answer their questions.
I also saw that, I saw that you anticipated the misunderstandings. You explained it to them carefully. You said listen, and you also showed them on the board what they should be doing. And yeah, I also saw you walking around, so that is really good. I was wondering, how do you facilitate for students to evaluate each other, to hold each other accountable, especially when they're working on the groups and, you're moving from one group to another? How do you go about doing
Always
that?
when you have students in groups, especially if there's more than 2 in a group, if they have 3 in it or 4 in it, there are always students that hang back, don't want to do anything, they want to let everybody else do it and just kind of sit there. So one thing that I did require is I told them that when they filled out their paperwork, I wanted to see everybody's handwriting on that paperwork, and that they had to take turns, and also they could not divide the work up and say, you take these questions, I'll do these questions, that they had to discuss them, they had to work together. And I checked that when I went around, and I did find some students who were trying to just, portion out the tasks to each person instead of being involved in it. So that obviously can be a problem, and you have to be really aware of it. That's why you have to walk around the room all the time, and you have to check, and you have to ask them questions, and especially those that you think are not participating, to make sure that they know what's going on.
Right, yeah, correctly. A couple suggestions that I have, the things that maybe perhaps you can consider in the future,
Okay.
especially because, science is such a hands-on, and it is great that they're working together, learning from each other. One would be for them to evaluate themselves. So something that I've done with my students is that I talk to them about, accountability. What does that look like? And then I tell them that, I'm going to be walking around the room. And so I know when you're working and when you're not working. So at the end of the class, you guys are going to be giving each other a grade. And so for instance, something that it would be really great if you want to get it started at the beginning of next year when you to set up the expectations. And so another thing that I do, I assigned roles. So for this one, perhaps one thing that I will suggest maybe a leader. So he or she, and then you tell them, hey, this is what the leader is supposed to do. It's not just to tell them what they need to do, but what is it? What are the expectations?
Mm-hmm.
And then they grade themselves. So for instance, on this one, there were 3 girls, and then they have to justify, why did you give yourself a 98? Why did you give yourself 100?
Okay.
And then, for instance, this student, Martha, she said, ¿qué dice? El grado, no puedo leer, dice.
Grado, pero yo mismo creo porque
Me enfoqué y traté de quedarme en el tema sin distraerme. So she is reflecting, that she tried to be focused, and then therefore she gave herself a 91. Okay. And because she was so honest about that, I modified it to a 95.
Right.
And like I told him, I said, I'm going to be watching, and see, that way you as the teacher, not you facilitate. You let them do the stuff, that you're watching, and, they learn to be good with their time. And so for the lead person, there was one member, just me, the leader, she gave her an 85, because she did her work, but she was distracted a bit at the end. And so then at the leader, I said, I have to give her feedback, And then as a leader, I said, we have to, lead by example. And so if one of them is not focused, is off task, then you did not correct the behavior. You did not say, hey, you need to go back, because that's what the leader does, So, and then that way it helps you, focus on the kids that really need your help, and, and give them the control of their learning, so.
Actually, I think that's a really good idea to have them give their feedback. And I had anticipated possibly having them rate each other, which I decided not to do because I didn't want, sometimes that can cause problems within a group because one person might get upset if they didn't receive.
Well, then, but see,
Correct.
well,
So
and,
it's probably a better idea to have them grade themselves.
and also to each other, because, if you set up the expectations, like I have it on the board, and especially at the beginning of the year, I watched you, and also, and you're going to be fair.
Exactly.
And then also they need to learn that you cannot confuse business, with a friend, because then you're not being true to yourself, and you're not being a good friend, because then they're gonna go on to ninth grade, being a slacker, and then you're gonna be stuck doing all the work.
And I think it's actually because I have done this before, having them grade themselves, and what you find is those students who are really focused will grade themselves probably lower than they think. And then I like how you suggested that because I saw all this, I adjusted it up. And I often find the kids that really didn't do anything, usually they'll grade themselves higher. And that gives you a good opportunity to talk to them and say, do you really deserve it? And then do a one-on-one with them.
Exactly, and and then I think that if you were to do this like at the beginning of the year and be consistent, then you're not gonna have to spend that much time explaining each role, because they're gonna know, oh, okay.
Exactly.
In this case, I've had these kids since 6th grade. They're in 7th grade, so they know.
They know the system.
They know, and that they know that, hey, as a teacher, I reserve the right to change the grade if I see that you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And
that's a good input.
Yeah, and another thing, which is just in case, if you don't, to save you time on trying to grouping students, I did this a few years back. Actually, another teacher gave me the idea, and so I divided this set of cards. So if I want to pair them, I have 2 ways to pair them. If I want to do it in 3s, or if I want to do it in 4s, and so this way is randomly, because sometimes they complain that they want to be with their friends.
Exactly.
And then again, I said, look, listen, it is a privilege to work with a group, so let's go ahead and have a good time, work with a friend. But then again, I always like to say that I reserve the right to move you if I see that you cannot work.
Yes. And by this time of the year, when we did this lab, I pretty much knew the kids and knew how they were and who I should and should not put them with.
Yeah.
And so I don't generally let my kids choose their partners, just because they will always choose their best friend and they don't always get work done. But sometimes they will choose their best friend and they work exceptionally well together. And when I find that, then I tend to put them together.
And and I do the same thing when they want to sit. I say, okay, I'm gonna give you the one chance, but if you don't take that, I'm just gonna go ahead and assign you a seat because I know better.
Yeah, exactly.
But thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
my
All
pleasure.
right. So
Thank you
see
for
you
your
on
input.
Monday. Thank you.
All right. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks.